Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. We are now 1 year into the race for Congress in New Hampshire's 1st District, and for as long as that race has been polled, we've seen a consistent frontrunner among the Democrats, Stefany Shaheen of Portsmouth. With about 5 months to go until the state primary, she is preparing to defend that lead as the other Democrats in the race try to surpass her. Ms. Shaheen is our guest this morning on CloseUp. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Good morning.
So let's start with the ceasefire in Iran. And of course, as we tape this, a lot can change in the next 48 hours. But from the bigger picture perspective, if you're in Congress in 2027 and beyond, do you see it as a priority for the U.S. to maintain sort of a military vigilance over Iran? And will you be voting to fund continued airstrikes, perhaps a greater naval presence in the Gulf as a result?
Well, look, this war has been very destabilizing to the region. Obviously, it's intolerable to have nuclear weapons in Iran. But the fact is, this president just said as of this week that he needed another $1.5 trillion to fund this war. And that's going to come at the cost of health care, is what he was proposing, which is entirely unacceptable from my perspective. The administration seems much more focused on funding bombs, ballrooms, and tax breaks for billionaires than it does on addressing the issues that most impact New Hampshire families. Things like health care, cost of living. We saw today that inflation is surging, gas prices are up. We got to stay focused on what it's going to do to help bring down these costs for New Hampshire families.
When the president posted last week, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again." The administration alleges that precipitated the ceasefire, but some Democrats say it was so severe and so far out of bounds from what a president would normally say that it constituted an impeachable offense. Do you agree with that?
I think it's entirely outrageous and troubling, to say the least. We saw another series of posts on Easter Sunday. The president seems to be becoming increasingly unhinged. I think we have to leave every option on the table. I believe American families and New Hampshire families need us to be focused on bringing the costs down that are impacting their lives. But we can do these things at the same time. There has to be a level of accountability here. And I think this statement that we're going to destroy an entire civilization, that the president would ever utter those words on social media, is alarming and needs the utmost seriousness to address.
A lot of Democrats are saying it's now time to reassert the war powers of Congress, essentially to say no declaration of war has been made, and then to pull funding from things like this, I guess. Given the U.S. reliance on the resources in the Gulf, fossil fuels, helium, as we've learned, for a lot of medical procedures, would it be a mistake for Congress to defund military activity around Iran?
Well, look, this military activity right now is driving up our energy costs higher than we've seen in a long time. It cost me over $83 to fill the gas in my tank, my minivan, this week. Families across New Hampshire are seeing this firsthand. Energy prices are some of the highest they've in New Hampshire of any other state in the country. This war isn't helping bring those prices down, it's driving them up.
Let's return to some stateside issues here. Someone has been making speculative stock trades, very well timed, right ahead of a lot of major announcements coming out of the White House involving military and global affairs. They're making a lot of money, and they're either on an all-time lucky streak or they potentially have access to inside information. What should Congress be doing about this?
Look, I think we need to pass a series of anti-corruption laws, beginning with banning stock trading. We also have to highly regulate these prediction markets, these prediction betting trading markets, Polymarket and Kalshi. The idea that you could have insider information and people are making money over whether people go to war, whether our American soldiers are risking their lives, is outrageous, and it's something we need to be outlawing.
It doesn't seem like Congress, I mean, who's doing anything about this right now? I'm not hearing literally anything happen.
Well, I've put forward proposals for how to ban some of these and really take aggressive steps on corruption. This administration is the most corrupt in the history of our country. This president has pocketed over $1 billion just in the last year personally. We need to roll out a whole series of proposals for how we're going to address corruption, starting with banning stock trading. You know, we don't take corporate PAC money in our campaign. We need to get money out of politics. We need campaign finance reform. We need to regulate these prediction markets in ways that no one, as you say, has done yet. But there's a lot we can do here, and we need to be doing it.
Let's talk a little bit about the Epstein Files. And the First Lady was talking about this this last week. You worked for Dean Kamen for several years at the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute. He stepped down from his role with First Robotics after releases from the Epstein Files. We do want to note that he's not been accused of any wrongdoing or accused in any involvement in Epstein's criminal activities. But what was your reaction to seeing more of Dean Kamen in these releases from the Epstein Files?
Well, I was very troubled and disturbed by what came out in the latest release of the Epstein Files. I immediately called for an investigation. I think this is yet another example of the Trump administration's broken promises. He campaigned in 2024 on releasing all of the Epstein Files. The survivors and victim of Jeffrey Epstein deserve justice, and they have to be held to account. And what we're seeing right now is that the administration is saying that Pam Bondi, their attorney general, won't even come and testify. It's outrageous. All the files should be released. Everybody should be held to account. The fact that we only have Ghislaine Maxwell currently serving jail time speaks volumes to the lack of accountability that's yet been held to those people who have perpetuated and perpetrated these crimes. The survivors and victims deserve justice.
So you've severed your business ties with Dean Kamen, but if you become the congresswoman from the 1st District, Army's a big deal still. What will be your relationship with him moving forward?
Well, look, Army does an incredible amount of work. My work was always prepared to wind down as this campaign was ramping up. I think the work that's being done here to accelerate biomanufacturing in Manchester, it's created a tremendous number of jobs and done some incredible work. I want to see that work continue because the fact is this is the frontier of the next set of treatments for some of our most complicated and costly diseases like diabetes, which my family's been personally impacted by. Today in Manchester, we're actually manufacturing right down the street cells that have the promise of curing some of our more complicated diseases like diabetes.
You're already facing some attacks from Republicans online for your connection with Dean Kamen. How are you going to defend yourself if and when this turns into a full-blown super PAC attack like we've seen on Senator Sununu? The idea that your proximity to someone in the Epstein Files is somehow a negative thing.
Well, it's absolutely absurd. You know, the fact is, I've been focused on building a small business in the district. I've been focused on tackling some of the most complicated issues facing our healthcare system. Healthcare has been the cause of my life. It's what got me into this race. It's what I'm committed to focusing on. And there are things we can do today to tackle healthcare that no one's talking about, that we're going to keep talking about in this race. Things like supporting Senator Sanders' bill to expand Medicare coverage for vision, dental, and hearing. You know, we had a dear friend, Mark Hounsel, who just went on the record, shared his personal story about the fact that Medicare Advantage was cut, his health plan was cut out of thin air. He no longer has some of that supplemental coverage he needs, and as a result, he's not going to his cardiologist. These are issues that are impacting New Hampshire voters every day. I'm the best person suited to tackle these issues, and that's what I'm going to stay focused on. I would also just say, I think the grassroots support we are building in this campaign speaks for itself. 2,600 New Hampshire folks have stepped up to support our campaign so far. We're going to keep building on that support and work very hard across the district to reach people town by town.
And as the frontrunner, you get a lot of incoming. Recently, the Maura Sullivan campaign was criticizing you for a donation you received and then returned from the corporate super PAC from the firearms manufacturer Sig Sauer. Sig Sauer, obviously a big business in the 1st Congressional District, not your typical Democratic campaign donor. How did you end up getting that money in the first place?
You know, we decided very early in the race we were not going to take corporate PAC money. When we went through our disclosures at the end of the calendar year, we saw we had gotten a contribution and we returned it. We've been saying consistently we are not taking any corporate PAC money. We will continue to not take corporate PAC money. And as I've said, we need campaign finance reform desperately. We need to get money out of politics and get folks focused on the issues that matter most to people here.
So you did not solicit the donation?
I did not.
Okay. In Congress, on the subject of firearms, would you support a ban on the sale of so-called assault weapons?
Ultimately, I think we have to go back to the assault weapons proposal that the Clinton administration put forward. We saw that when that was in place, gun deaths went down. And ultimately, look, I believe when innocent kindergartners were killed in their classrooms and government failed to act, we sent a message that we can't tackle this issue. The fact is, there are reasonable measures we can take that the vast majority of Americans support to make guns safer, to get guns out of the hands of people who seek to do harm. We just saw an incident in New Hampshire earlier this week with somebody who was in a mental health crisis and shot an officer. We've got to do a lot more to ensure gun safety.
And if you do implement an assault weapons ban, what happens to the existing sort of stockpile that's out there? Everyone who privately owns things like AR-15s and things like that, would you require registration of the existing so-called assault weapons that are already out there?
It's a good question. I think we need to look at it very carefully. I think there's lots of steps we can take to make it easier for people who already have those weapons to make sure we know where they are, make sure they're legal. And ultimately, these are things I think the vast majority of American people want. And
within that ban, we all think about AR-15s for the most part when we're talking about this, but how far would it go? What other weapons would be banned?
Ultimately, we'd have to look at that depending on the legislation. But I think we're at a place right now in this country where American citizens want compromise. They want people to come together, work across the aisle, and solve some of the most pressing problems facing this country. Those problems start with health care, from my perspective, and they extend to issues that are impacting the health and well-being of the American people. We can get these challenges tackled, but in order to do that, we got to work together. We got to come together to the table and shoulder to shoulder figure out where we can find compromise and get things done for people.
Another major issue that's out there right now is tariffs. Obviously, the Supreme Court case came down and the emergency tariffs were determined to be unconstitutional. Some businesses are now seeking the money back from the federal government. A lot of people are wondering, hey, wait a second, the consumers paid for that. Is there a way to get consumers their money back rather than the businesses?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things I've been actively speaking out against and will be fighting for, the consumers and the small businesses. We've got a lot of large businesses already lining up with lawsuits to come after the federal government to get those refunds. We need to make sure not just the consumers, but also the small business owners, not just the corporations, are getting the refunds. And we know how to do this. I mean, we know who's paying these tariffs. And the fact is, New Hampshire's been disproportionately impacted by the tariffs. Canada's our largest trading partner. And one of my favorite days on the campaign trail started at the Pride Parade in Portsmouth and ended in Laconia for Motorcycle Weekend. And when I was walking around Laconia with Charlie St. Clair, I asked him, what's the biggest difference you've seen between this year and last year for Bike Week in Laconia? And he said 100,000 fewer people because the Canadians didn't come. So these tariffs have had sweeping impacts on our economy in New Hampshire. They have impacted our small businesses, they've impacted our hospitality industry, and they've impacted consumers. And we've got to fight to get these refunds.
How do you get the money back to the consumers, though? How do you separate that from what goes to the businesses?
Well, the fact is we know from the Customs and Border who's paying what. And we can get back to, we can identify and begin tracking who's paid what and start issuing those refunds. And the refunds have to come from the federal government.
Okay. Stefany Shaheen, thanks for joining us on Close Up, and we'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
Thanks so much, Adam.